I'm Bob Knote, and welcome back to the Camp Chaos Chronicles. On this episode, we're going to take a look at headers. Not how to install them, but how I made them for the XJS track car. I think you're going to enjoy this. Dang it. Now you may well be asking the question, why go to all the trouble to build headers for your car? Well, if you're interested in high performance and modifying your engine to make more power, it's very much like tuning a musical instrument. When you talk to people who are knowledgeable in the subject of induction and exhaust system tuning, you're discussing things like first, second, third, fourth harmonics in the intake side, resonance, all these sorts of things that you would be familiar with if you played a musical instrument. And that's what it is. And so there's a bit of a science to it. You can get software to help you design your header system so that you'll get correct tubing lengths and diameters and that sort of thing. You got to know things like your camshaft specifications, exhaust and intake valve diameter, combustion chamber size, volumetric efficiency, those sorts of things. The fact is that if you get this right, then you can go on to your other modifications, but they all have to be modified with your exhaust system modifications in mind. So bottom line is, I wanted to make more power, but really, there's a part of me that just wanted to make more and better noise. Building a set of headers for any car is not an easy job, but it's particularly difficult on the Jaguar XJS with the V12 engine, because there's just barely enough room for the stock cast iron exhaust manifolds. I had 4 tools on hand, however, that were going to make this job a whole lot easier, even possible. Not sure how I would have done it without them. The first tool is the IC Engine Works Precision Exhaust Header Modeling System. And that made it a whole lot easier to design this system. The IC Engine modeling system is basically round Legos. They come in 1-inch blocks, regardless of whether they're straight or curved. You stack them together and they snap together like that, and they come in straight 2, 3, and 4-inch radii blocks. And again, as I said, they all are 1 inches in length. So when you get your tube built, you don't have to take a tape measure and measure out the model that you've made. You just simply count the blocks. They are 1 inch along center line, all of them. And of course, they can be rotated into any position. And also you can see on the outside that there are arrows on the outside of them that enable you to align all the blocks so that they're flat. You can also, being that there's graduations, little dots all the way around, you can rotate them and then catalog that for the next time if you need to reproduce what you've got. Haven't had this much fun since I played with my kids' Legos. The second tool was the engine test running stand, and this is a tool that I used to mock up the tubes prior to bringing them out to the car. The third tool is the ultimate rotisserie. It's not just any rotisserie. This is a tool that enables me to take the complete car, mount it on a rotisserie, and rotate it around. And this was an invaluable asset when it came to actually fit tubes that you mocked up on the test stand and see if they actually worked on the car. And fourth, what you're going to need is some sort of a fixture that you can use to accurately cut the mandrel bends that you're going to need for your header tubes. And IC Engine Works makes a really nice one for about $600, but I made mine out of 20 bucks worth of plywood. I think you can see how it works. I started out on the right side, on the A bank of the engine, because it appeared like it was going to be a little bit easier to come up with a solution for that side, and sort of learn my way around this header building thing before I actually moved over to the B side, which appeared like it was going to be a much bigger problem. And it didn't take me long to come up with my mock-up for the tubes on the right side. And then it was a simple matter using the cutting jig to make the parts for the right side of the engine. It only took a matter of just a few hours in order to get to this point. I then took them off of the mock-up and put them in the car to see if everything was going to clear, and they did. And it really looked like a can of worms. But, as I said, they fit, and they actually looked pretty good. And here's what they looked like under the car. Problem was that those tubes needed to get through a triangular shaped space that was described by the frame rail, the bottom of the bell housing, and the bottom of the oil pan. And there was no way that I could figure some way of getting that configuration of tubing through that space. So had to come up with a plan B. And this looked like what it was going to take to make that work, because literally any other configuration was going to result in tubes getting down below the oil pan, which wouldn't do. So all I had to do now is take everything apart and put it back together again, so it turned out like this. The first thing I did was I took this piece of triangular shaped aluminum and affixed 6 expandable frost plugs in the configuration that I determined that I needed. And as you probably know, there's a nut on the other side of each one of these that if you tighten it, it will expand the rubber, which will lock onto the inside of the tube and hold it in position securely so that work can be done on the other tubes without changing anything. And this is how tubes A1, 2, and 3 looked in Plan B. And it didn't take much longer to come up with tubes 4, 5, and 6. Now I had to take all 6 tubes through that triangular space opening that I told you about earlier, and I moved the target then into its new position so it can accept the extensions off of these tubes already made. Despite the unevenness on the ends, everything is within 1 inch of being equal length at this point, and it won't get much worse. I then decided it was time to get some collectors on the premises, and I was going to have 4 sets of 3 header tubes coming down to the exhaust pipes. So I had Chris Stepp down at Stainless Header Manufacturing build the collectors for me, and they were beautiful. And I believe that they were about $150 a piece, as I recall. Now they had the A bank of the engine sort of under control. I decided I was going to move on to the left side, being I've got plenty of experience now to tackle this problem over here. The problem over here is, first of all, we've got the power steering rack and the steering shaft that sticks right up in the middle of this, right where you want to run some tubes. Also, you've got the oil filter casting and the oil supply line that is in exactly the spot you need to go. And the good news there is that I actually had a blanking plate on over the oil filter openings in the block, and That saved a lot of room. And what you see here is one of the more bizarre solutions to the problem of clearing the power steering rack. But eventually we came up with something for tubes B1, 2, and 3, where they would be able to clear the valving unit on the power steering rack. It was going to be tight, and eventually we would have a heat shield on it, but they were going to work. Those 3 tubes are actually going to fit between the frame rail and the steering gear, which really opened things up on the inside of the steering shaft. When it came to tubes 4, 5, and 6, however, things were starting to get a little bit out of hand. In fact, B6 was the real problem. At one point, it looked like this was going to have to be the final solution for B6. I'm not kidding. But in a rare flash of insight, suddenly this solution became apparent, and it's been working great ever since. That having taken about 3 weeks to complete, I went back to the right side for some therapy, just taking these tubes and getting them oriented in their 3-tube collectors and pretty much getting this side ready to weld. And I was pretty pleased with the result. This is what the B side looks like after everything was tacked in place and mocked up to see if everything fit properly. And at this point, it did. And it didn't look too crazy until you get under the car, and now it looks like things are going to get to be a little bit of a handful. And there you go. Now that everything was tacked together, it was time to call in Lieutenant Dan Wendersky, who is a high-level TIG welder, and have him take all these parts and weld them up into what they're finally supposed to be. Beautiful. My only fear at this point is we're going to get all this stuff welded together and it's all going to warp just a little bit to the degree that nothing's going to fit together again. But finally they got welded together. I have no idea how many hours Dan had in it, but got it done. And they really looked great. I was starting to get excited. But you ain't seen nothing yet. Now it was time to take everything, put it in the trunk of the car, and take it over to stainless header manufacturing and have them put the ceramic coating on the pipes. And everything really looked great. Chris made the comment that he'd never had so many pieces in one set of headers ever in his career, but he understood the necessity of it. And here we have the final product. The clip of the dynamometer pull that's coming up next is interesting for a couple of things. First of all, the headers added exactly 20 horsepower at the crankshaft, which was gratifying. You always hope for more, but you know, I'll take it. The other thing is that while you can hear the exhaust note in the background, sort of back by the door, what you hear coming out the front, that shriek, is new. In fact, when I was doing the dyno pull, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking that the RPMs are going through the roof, and I look at the tach and it hadn't even gone through 4,000 yet. So that is pretty impressive. In fact, whenever I'm at the track, people are remarking how great the car sounds. So while I'm not sure that it was worth ruining my life for 3 months, it is gratifying and pays dividends every time I take it to the track. answer to your next question, no, I will not build you a set of these because, number one, they would be about a $6,000 set of headers welded up out of stainless. Number two, you'd have to replumb your entire lubrication system. Number three, they're a nightmare to get on. And number four, on the street, you'd probably cook your power steering rack. That being said, if you like these videos and you want to see more, like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, and leave us a comment down below so we can know what we can do better. And we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicles.